Good morning, everyone. Archbishop Richard Gagnon here. This is our Friday morning report. Thank you very much for joining us for February the 17th, Friday, February the 17th. And as I mentioned last week, we're spending a couple of our Friday morning reports interviewing people in more depth, people what I call people of interest, people who are of interest to us as Catholics and as Canadian citizens. And this morning I'm going to be speaking to, as a matter of fact, I spoke to her last week, and so I'll bring that video in, a very interesting person by the name of Joan Foo Mahoney, who lives in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. She'll speak to us from Malaysia, and she is a very interesting woman. Her background covers many fields, truly an international person, and she has lately become an author, an owner of 2 publishing companies, and the book that I received, given to me as a gift, that her latest book, is on Mary, the life of Mary. And what she does with that book is very interesting. I think that there's much to reflect on. So I'm going to go right now to that interview I had last week with Joan Foo Mahoney. Well, this morning I'd like to welcome very joyfully a special guest to our Friday report. I want to welcome Joan Foo Mahoney, who is joining us this morning in this Friday report. And we're going to talk a little bit about her book in a moment. And I think you'll find it rather intriguing. Now, Joan, I received many books as gifts. People give me this and give me that. And I try to go through them, peruse through these books. And I was expecting to do something similar with your book here, Millennials Meet Mary. And so I started to do that, but I found myself going through it in detail. And in this wonderful little book you wrote in honor of Our Blessed Lady, you describe it as the extraordinary life of a universal woman. And we'll get down to that in a moment, universal woman. Reflections by a millennial generation on a unique and timeless treasury of art by Joan Foo Mahoney. And so I read this and I thought to myself, you know, this is a very interesting experiment, a literary, artistic, sociological, and religious experiment. And we'll talk about why in a moment. But before we do that, I'd just like to introduce Joan more formally and give you an idea of her background a little bit, because Joan, you've had a very varied life, and you've traveled very widely, and you've gone through various different stages of life in terms of interests and that sort of thing. You began your career in 1974 as a corporate lawyer in Tokyo for 10 years, a period which where you found particularly fulfilling and exciting and stimulating. Japan was followed by more years working as a lawyer for international clients in China, Hong Kong, New York City, and Boston. My goodness, traveled widely. After 40 years of legal practice, Joan, you retired in 2000. We won't go into that too much. You retired in the year 2000 to pursue other interests. And these interests include writing, reading, travel, and charities. And you founded 2 publishing companies, JF Publishing and Cross Time Matrix. And with regards to this particular book of our subject of conversation today, Millennials Meet Mary, you launched this at the Vatican Museum in May 2020. And here you relate the story of the historical Virgin Mary, combining the narrative with magnificent Renaissance artwork and adding commentary by 80 young millennials from 42 countries, all of whom you know personally. I don't know how you do that, but that's quite remarkable. And you also write about your own return to the Lord, your own sort of return to faith, and you have a popular digital newsletter called Smitten by Faith, an undisguised declaration of your faith and your personal spiritual journey, where you are totally captivated and intrigued by our Blessed Lady. So Joan, I hope I've done that a little bit of justice. I could spend a lot more time going through that. But basically speaking, your book, Millennials Meet Mary, is a panorama of great Renaissance art with Mary as the subject. It also is a collection of your personal commentary on the art itself, which helps people understand what they're looking at in the book. It is beautiful plates in the book. But here comes the part that really intrigued me. Besides that, it's all very interesting so far. But the millennials from across the world viewing these pieces of art from very diverse backgrounds and giving their reactions to it. And this is what I found to be rather interesting, because instead of writing about millennials, you allow the millennials to speak, and you allow the art to speak through the millennials. And I think that this is one of the reasons why I was reluctant to just peruse your book. I was interested in the characters, I was interested in the commentary, and so on. So, Joe, that's my little introduction to this. And maybe I'll begin, and you can give me your reaction as we go through this by making a few quotes from Millennials Meet Mary. And the first one is from your backstory. And this is what you say. You say, I am neither a Marian scholar nor an historian. I am a Catholic, devout, practicing, and I dare say, totally smitten by the story of Mary. I hope that non-Christians will read this book in the spirit of universal interest. This is not meant to be a religious book, nor is it meant to evangelize. So, Joan, if I was to say that in this book, you desire to share your joy of Mary, knowing Mary, with other people, and let the graces fall where they may. Would that be a fair characterization?
Your Grace, I am definitely so honored and thrilled to be on this program and for your wonderful introduction of me. I'm not sure if it's well deserved. I'm truly Catholic in more ways than Catholic means, in the universal sense, from my life, as you said, which has taken me all over the world, and I've known so many people. And when I, after 50 years, through a very long journey, as you know, I've been through Buddhism, Hinduism, everything, but return to God, return to Jesus, which is a wonderful kindness from the Lord that found me back. I definitely wanted to share this joy. And my way of sharing this joy was writing, because I love to write. I think all lawyers love to write, but I had all my friends from the world, and I love art. So when I decided to write Millennials Meet Mary, and I did it quite fast, it wasn't difficult for me to match any specific artwork with the millennials. First of all, I love young people. I'm an old person now, but I believe that our future is in the young. And I could match specific artworks with the millennials because I knew them. I knew their lives. I knew their history. I knew their joys, their woes. And I thought that their commentary on this piece of art, which highlights the life of Mary, would give it a different dimension. And yes, the impact. I never sought to evangelize, but deep in my heart, I guess I did. I wanted the millennials to inspire. And And as you can see, when they write about art, not from an art historian's view, but from their lives, I think they did, yes.
Yes, well, thank you, and we'll get to that in a moment. I'm going to ask you in a few minutes a little bit about that amazing matching up with pieces of Renaissance art with individual millennials from different countries in the world with different religious backgrounds, or perhaps no religion at all. I'm intrigued by that. But I'll quote you again here. I'm at your introduction here. You say, I have carefully and lovingly chosen each of the millennials so that Mary's millennials truly come from all corners of the world. So I'm intrigued by the use of the phrase Mary's millennials. Can you maybe add a little bit of light to that?
Well, when I started the book, I spoke to my very good friend, the priest, my mentor in Rome, Father Thomas Montanaro from the Legionaries of Christ. And I asked him, I said, I would like to write a book about Mary, the biography of Mary. And he very kindly smiled at me and said, that's a good idea. Of course, how audacious of me. There are millions of books out of Mary, but my approach was this way. And I think he rather liked it. And then thinking of the title, I love alliteration. So Millennials Meet Mary had a lovely sound to it, especially since I was going to ask my millennials to write. It took me, and then I flew with the title. I was actually in 2019 at the Vatican Museum, and I was at Father Kevin's office, the then director. And when I entered his office, there was this amazing portrait of Mary by Barocci, which was there, not in the gallery, because it was supposed to be restored. And that's the cover of my book. So I said, oh my God, Father Kevin, I've never seen such a beautiful, beautiful painting of Mary. So I took a picture with my little iPhone, and I said to Father Kevin, I said, is it all right if I use this for the cover of Millennials Meet Mary? He said, of course. I said, I'll send a good photographer over to take the picture. Then I left Rome, came back to Kuala Lumpur, and the whole of Italy locked down with the COVID. So I had to use my iPhone picture. So when I later sent it to print, even my designer and my printer was astonished at the digital quality of the picture. I think that it was like Mother Mary having a hand in it and saying, here you go, girl. It's good enough for the cover of the book. And I never got to take an official picture. So what you see is from my little iPhone.
I see. I didn't realize that. And I should remind also that you are speaking to us from Kuala Lumpur. We're halfway around the world and early in the morning. And certainly on that theme of that Millennials Meet Mary, as you have said, it's an encounter, isn't it? It's an encounter between these young people and our Blessed Lady in different ways. For example, let me take one example, if I may, from your book. It's from a millennial by the name of Dr. Carrie Lynn Lim Higgins. And she is a physician, pediatric rehabilitation in Sydney, Australia. And she's looking, she was asked to look at a beautiful Renaissance painting from Alessandro Turchi called The Birth of the Virgin. Now, I don't know if this comes out very much in the camera, but that would be it there if it's coming out. This is what she writes. Just a few sentences. She says, pregnancy and childbirth have always been considered incredibly risky for both women and their babies. I wonder what it must have been like for a woman in Anne's time without serial antenatal ultrasounds or the education and access to healthcare we have now. With all the medical advances of the 21st century, there is still significant maternal and infant perinatal and morbidity and mortality. Now, with that sentence, and she goes on in her commentary, she's giving a personal reflection on her experiences as a mother, having 3 children herself, and she's thinking of Mary's experience, human experience as a mother. And when I think about that, often we look at the Blessed Virgin, with a halo and all of that, and we forget the human aspect. So I felt that Dr. Carrie Lynn, made a valuable contribution in encountering our Blessed Lady through this Renaissance work of art. Would that be a good way of expressing it, do you think?
Well, Your Grace, I think you really caught on perfectly, because Carolyn, she's a physician. She's also my niece who lives in Sydney.
Ah,
And she is an agnostic. My whole family's Catholic, and we've all made an imprint in her lives. And I think that the Catholic imprint is there, but all young people have to do their own thing. And Carolyn respects God and Mary, but she is an agnostic. So when I asked her to write, she was writing from her experience, from as you say, it turned out beautifully, because she talks about Mary as a woman giving birth, just like Carolyn as a woman and as a physician herself. So yes, let's not forget the human aspect of Mary, and it just brings a wonderful dimension to the book.
it really does, and these are important things to remember. And I think too, that the artists were inspired, and they were people who were inspired by the subject matter and so on. And because of that inspiration, we can relate to this in various ways and from different backgrounds. And so I think that Carrie Lynn's contribution there was very, very valuable and helpful to us. Here's an opposite example. I'm going now to Mary Yip. Now, Mary Yip, she's a CEO in a communications company, co-founder of, I think it is a company to do with cosmetics and so on. And she lives in Singapore. And she grew up by going to Catholic school and from a Catholic family, I take it. And she's looking at a different subject. Her subject is, I'll just flip your book here, Joseph. Now, this famous picture of Joseph, painting by Guido Reni, entitled simply Saint Joseph, 1640 to 1642, as an old man, and a face full of expressions, a man who's been through a lot, obviously. And this is what May wrote, May Yip. She says, but over the years, whenever there was a reference to St. Joseph, I was struck by the fact that he would have been an anomaly, not just during the lifetime of Jesus Christ, but in today's society. Patriarchy, she says, still reigns 2 Christian centuries later, with the idea of a man taking a wife who is pregnant with a child that is not his own, still very much unthinkable. As such, I see in the painting a different kind of strength, not of ostentatious material wealth or physical prowess, but strength emanating from strong personal belief. I resonated with that. Mary Yip, and so many of your millennials, they dig into scripture through the paintings. And Joseph always comes across to us as a man of silence, of prayer, of strength and peace. And she picked that up. And she did it in a very beautiful way.
Well, I love Joseph. And as you can see, so does Mary Yip, who's a beautiful, amazing Catholic millennial. And I know the contrast of giving her this incredible painting of an old man, and she is young, vibrant, and just so amazingly fascinating. And would have been probably, some would say, oh, why did you give her that painting? And actually, I think, Your Grace, I was a little bit guided too by the Holy Spirit, because I wasn't really sure. I knew that whatever Mary writes, because she's a beautiful writer, would be wonderful. But somehow I felt this painting by Guido Reni of Joseph, my favorite man, she would do justice to it, and she definitely did. She was wonderful. And thank you, Your Grace, for spotting it. And I think many of my readers actually loved what she wrote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, there's so much that can be said here throughout all these paintings. It's really a bit of a retreat going through it. But I'll move along very quickly. I have two more brief examples for you. There's so many possibilities here. I'm going to a lady, a woman, Rashini Sridhar. She comes from a Hindu background. She is an actress and a teacher of theatrical arts. And she viewed a painting of the young Virgin Mary by Francesco de Suberan. And Mary is pictured in this way, seated on a cushion. I don't recall seeing that portrait in any book. And this is what she says. And here we have art speaking to someone, and how the person is brought into the mystery of Mary through the inspiration of the art. That, as Catholics, we use the art so much, and this must not be neglected. It's very important. Beauty is important. And so we hear this. She says, born in a family that follows rituals related to the Hindu religion, I have only read about biblical stories from various books. However, Mary in this picture seems to be in a position of total self-comfort, surrounded by all the essentials like plants, water, a pillow, and even a scroll of paper. However, she does not seem to be troubled or thinking of something deep, perhaps related to what she is writing. One could even interpret it as praying. But what would someone surrounded by most things of comfort really require? What is she thinking? So she tries to enter that. She goes on to say, it does tend to remind one that what we require most is always close to us. That's interesting. God is close to us. And yet we look for it everywhere else, or that our needs are never ending, and we will always pray and ask for more and more as human beings, however young or old. Even at a young age, one can notice that Mary displays great stability, will, and power. The sense of the inner person comes across to Rossini when she looks at this without a Christian background, but looking at the inspiration of this painting.
And I think Roshni is able to do this because of her strong Hindu faith. There is God in her life in whatever format, and she brings so much clarity and wisdom to this very rare painting, which I found when I was doing my research for artworks. It's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and it is exquisite. And Roshni was saying, we all like to be surrounded by the things we are comfortable in, and especially so during the COVID. So this was rather interesting. And yeah, from a Hindu. And Roshni now, she's left Chennai and she's now in London on a scholarship studying drama. And she will go back to Chennai to teach drama. And she's a beautiful dancer. As you can see from the book, she's a very, very beautiful girl.
Mm-hmm. Yes, certainly. And you know, it's interesting, just before I go to my last example here, and you've been very generous with your time, Joan, I much appreciate that. But you sent me a little printout here of comments that came to you after the first anniversary of the Millennials Meet Mary book, a year anniversary. And one of the commentaries came from someone we just referred to, May Yip. And May says this: I am so excited to be part of this amazing project. I feel so blessed and will definitely share this blessing with all my loved ones. Thank you. Reason I read that is because obviously allowing millennial people to speak as a major part of your book has also given them a sort of an experience of transformation, an experience of beauty and truth that they want to share with other people. So there's all kinds of fruits that come from this.
Absolutely. And one of the major fruits that came out of this, Your Grace, is my digital newsletter, Smitten by Faith, which I launched also maybe a year after I wrote the book. All my millennials read it, and they're all rather accomplished persons in their own right. Some of them are major influences. So from a few hundred people who read Smitten by Faith, I now have more than 10,000 and growing. But Smitten by, while I was very careful in Millennials Meet Mary, sort of tiptoeing around the rosebuds, because I wanted the world to read it. I wanted the world to share the story of Mother Mary. I was not a shrinking violet with Smitten by Faith. I was absolutely out there declaring my love for Jesus, God, and all that, and Mother Mary. And it is this probably the catalyst of my millennials, because I was looking at the statistics, because it's published in Substack. Most of my readers are young. So I'm thrilled, really thrilled.
And I think our communications office here, Janelle, has viewed that site and shared that with me. So I congratulate you on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're going to take my last little example here is we'll take someone that comes not from a religious background, but from an atheistic background. And this is a very interesting lady. Her name is Anne Graveson Hepworth. And Anne describes herself as an atheist, and she viewed a beautiful, dramatic portrait of Our Blessed Lady by Giovanni Battista Salvi da Sassoferrato. How's that for Italian accent? And it's called The Virgin in Prayer. Now, this is what Anne says. She says, as an atheist who grew up in a non-religious setting, I cannot say I have an in-depth knowledge of Christianity's beliefs in Mary's life. As such, my first impressions and enjoyment of Virgin in Prayer comes from pure aesthetics of the piece. It is interesting to me, she says, that Mary is referred to as the Virgin rather than by her name, Virgin Mary. From a modern perspective, this title seems to shift the power away from Mary as a person. She says, seeing Mary in isolation is in contrast to the depictions that immediately come to my mind when I think about the Virgin Mary, the narrative of her as a mother and provider, depicting her with her child and emphasizing her connection with the Lord, with the child. As a result, this vulnerability and solitude without her son, as we see in the portrait, also doubles to showcase a freeing inner strength and dignity in the abstract. Quite perceptive. And I've just picked a few little nuggets out here. But again, delving into the painting, coming to understand the inspiration of the painter and relating that to one's own personal life, whether you come from a religious background or not, is a valuable contribution, I think.
Absolutely. And I knew when I asked Anne, who is from Denmark, to write for this book, I was a little bit on quicksand because I knew she was an atheist. However, I also knew that she's an artist, a person of great integrity. And I wanted her voice to speak. And she didn't disappoint because it's very interesting what she's written. And it would resound with a lot of our young readers.
It certainly is. And it does show, too, that beauty speaks and inspirational art will speak to the heart, you know.
Yes. Yeah. And as a contrast to Anne Graveson's approach, I had a young millennial who's from Brazil, who's an architect, Leis de Moraes, who is very Catholic. And she commented on a painting by Stefano de Verona, where I don't know if you can see it. Here we go.
Oh,
as
yeah.
you can see, yes. This is a picture, beautiful picture of Mary surrounded by the 12 apostles. It's in chapter 8, where it's at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles, this painting. It's a parchment with exquisite gold leaf and colors. Anyway, Leis de Moraes, this young architect from Brazil who works in I think Amsterdam now, writes and says, I'm looking at this beautiful artwork from the point of view of a woman who loves art and who loves Mary. So she goes on to speak about the figures, how Mary is, together with all the apostles, and the gathering did happen, and she talks about the symbolism and basically the sadness. This is after the crucifixion, and Mary is in the comfort and the bosom of the apostles. So to give a painting like this to a Catholic makes a lot of sense for me, because she can see beyond the artwork.
Yes, certainly. Well,
so it was very important how I placed the artworks.
So on that theme, as my final little thought here, because I know that our time is edging by and everything else, and it's early in the morning for you, where you are in Kuala Lumpur.
No, it's fine, Father.
But I think you mentioned to me, Joan, that many of the millennials could be watching this Friday morning report because of the subject matter, and they played a part in it. And there's they're from 42 different countries. Did I get that correct?
Yes, I have 80 millennials from 42 countries, from A to Z, from Argentina and Armenia in the A's, all the way down to Vietnam and Zambia in the Z's.
It's positively amazing. It's a universal reality, really. So now you're sitting down at your desk or wherever you are when you started writing this book, and you know all these people personally, and you have a particular fondness for young people, and you see certain very positive traits in the millennial generation, and you're an art lover, and all these Renaissance art. You're sitting down. Now, what am I going to do? How am I going to match this to that? How am I going to match this artwork to that person as I'm creating this book? Can you say a few words about that? Because I think that's a rather big project and interesting.
Well, first of all, I use Google, but I also knew I go to a lot of art exhibitions, and I go to the Vatican Museum quite often, at least once a year. All the artworks in the various museums that I have chosen for my book, I have been, and I use Renaissance artworks because there are no copyright issues. So all the artists are gone, and I had a wonderful assistant with my young nephew here, because this was lockdown and all of them couldn't go to university. They were all at home. So I got him to do some research for me, because I would choose the artwork and he would check with the museums whether I could use it, and and then look for high definition pictures. So I had actually a surfeit of pictures. I had so many, but I just wanted to keep some consistency. I had parchment, I had oil paintings, I had black and white engravings. I had sculptures, even the Pietà. So I wanted it to reflect. I wanted Mary's life, because so little is written or in about Mary. I wanted her life to shine with thus millions of paintings about Mother Mary, thank God. So it wasn't that difficult. The difficulty was getting my millennials to write, because they're all very busy, accomplished people. They all have day jobs. So when I asked them, they very politely said, "Oh, of course, Auntie Joan, of course, Joan, we'll do it, but we may not get it to you as fast as you wish." So I held my breath. I said, "Sure." My writing and the choosing of the artworks was really nothing compared to waiting for the essays from my 80 millennials. And then COVID happened. The world stopped.
Yes, yes, yes.
My heart stopped. And suddenly it was like a miracle. Bang, bang, bang. I kept getting emails. Here you are. Here's my commentary. Here you are. And they were beautiful. They were thoughtful. They filled me with so much joy, because I knew that these were people from all walks of life, from all religions, who had sat down in the sorrow of the COVID to reflect on their own lives and their beliefs as they wrote for me. So this was for me not just the book, but for example, I have a millennial from Lebanon who's gone through hell in that country, who wrote me a beautiful piece about Mary as well. So at the end, all of us, not just the millennials, but especially Mary's millennials, they seek faith, hope, and love. These are the same virtues that compel all of us to care for each other, to love our neighbors, to respect each other. I think that the millennials see this. They see that they're very attuned to the love for humanity, how we construe the world, how we love it, and what we love. That's, for me, was my take on the millennials. And I think they have showed us the way, they showed me anyway, the way so profoundly and so elegantly.
Well, that's beautiful and very meaningful, and you speak with a great deal of joy, and thanks be to God for that. And you know something, the millennial voice is often not heard, and you invited that voice to come forward on a subject of great profundity, and it's obvious that they took that very seriously. So, Joan, I want to sincerely thank you, all the way from across the world, speaking to us today. And I've been speaking with Joan Foo Mahoney and her beautiful book, Millennials Meet Mary. It's a wonderful meditation on art, a meditation on our Blessed Lady, but also a meditation on the human person, with an emphasis on the millennial generation today. Joan, God bless you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Your Grace, and Viva Maria, viva.
Viva Maria, viva. Thank you.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Joan is a person that has many areas of interest, but I think the witness to faith and bringing out into the open the thoughts of the millennial generation from many different angles, 80 people from 42 different countries of different backgrounds, has to be interesting and has to be of help to us in understanding the modern generation and how we can relate to them through the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I'm grateful to Joan for making time to be with us today. Well, I hope you enjoyed this morning's Friday morning report. May God bless and keep all of you well in the Lord. the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.